Chapter 1191, Grasping One's Mentality. Friendliness. Upon hearing the World Jayamon Sparrow's question, Fours nearly doubted her ears. The image of Mr. X's head that was put together, leaving it covered in cracks, crevices, and blood surfaced in her mind. Just as Fours was deliberating over her words, Audrey glanced at her and smiled at the World Jayamon Sparrow. To let the Abraham family sense your friendliness, it isn't about what you do, but what Miss Magician writes in her letters. That's right, unless I appear directly in front of Miss Magician's teacher, his understanding of me will only be limited to the various rumors and things that Miss Magician tells him. As long as the story she tells is good enough, even if it doesn't fit the actual situation, it doesn't matter. Klein suddenly realized that he had been splitting hairs on the question. Fours was somewhat enlightened by Miss Justice's words, but she didn't fully understand it. After looking at the hermit, the star, and company, Justice Audrey said to Fours, "You need to convey Mr. World's friendliness to your teacher. For this, you can fabricate some stories and not tell him the truth." "Then what should I say?" Fours asked for advice. This wasn't because she wasn't good at making up stories. On the contrary, this was what she was most adept at. However, the problem was that writing a novel that was well received was different from a story that could convince people. If she could get a senior psychologist's advice on the latter, it would undoubtedly be easier. Audrey had already thought of the details of the letter before she opened her mouth. She replied unhurriedly, "It's obvious that your teacher has already noticed that you've rapidly advanced, and because of Mr. X's death and all sorts of sensitive issues, he has a certain level of doubt and vigilance regarding the beyonder circles that you've participated in." "Yes," Fours nodded indiscernibly in agreement with Miss Audrey's judgment. If her teacher, Dorian Gray Abraham, was careless, he wouldn't have been able to survive to this day. He would have long been caught by the Aurora Order or died in the hands of other powers who were interested in the Abraham family. Audrey continued, "In such a situation, he will still maintain contact with you. He will teach you knowledge, give you formulas, and provide you with ingredients. This shows that, on the one hand, he acknowledges your character and morals, and on the other hand, he will also have a certain level of anticipation for you to obtain important information from the mysterious and dangerous Beyonder Circle, as well as you becoming a Sequence 4 demigod. This is the mentality we want to exploit." Audrey originally wanted to use the more neutral term, grasp, instead of exploit. But after pausing for a moment, she chose to face herself directly and face the essence of the matter. With Fours listening attentively and judgment, the star, and the hermit looking forward to what she had left to say, Audrey pursed her lips and said, "When you return, you can write to him and tell him that you have already become a traveler. It will make him happy for your growth, and also be surprised by such an exaggerated advancement speed. Then, you can answer the question he asked previously, saying that the gentleman who was seeking to purchase the Worm of Star had mentioned something, that the ancient curse in the Abraham family seems to come from a secret existence known as Mr. Door. This is a question that your teacher has never told you about, but is definitely concerned about. Without a doubt, he will feel fear towards the gentleman who seems to know that you're related to the Abraham family. He will want to avoid you, but he will definitely yearn to know more. He will then try to find out what secret lies behind the curse that has plagued generations of Abrahams, one that he has no solution to. At the same time, a letter exchange isn't a direct meeting. It will give him a certain sense of security. He might change his residence, change his identity, and use a more roundabout way to receive the letter, but there is a high chance that he will not sever the connection. Maintain this connection. Step by step, reveal something more valuable. You will awaken your teacher's desire and use it to portray an image of Mr. World so that your teacher can experience some form of friendliness." At this point, Audrey stopped and looked at the World Jayamon Sparrow once again. She could roughly tell that Mr. World's goodwill towards the Abraham family was because he had a request, but as for the specific request, she wasn't a clairvoyant, nor had she read Jayamon Sparrow's mind. Naturally, she couldn't guess it, nor could she continue explaining. Klein nodded and said with a hoarse smile, "After we establish this kind of indirect connection, I might ask your teacher for a transaction, and use the promise of breaking the curse to exchange for certain items of value. Through Demoness Trissy, he had already grasped the solution to the Abraham family's curse. However, he didn't plan on exchanging it for the Planeswalker Potion formula or a Grade 0 sealed artifact. On the one hand, the difference in value was too great, making him feel guilty. On the other hand, he didn't want to bring a dangerous existence like Mr. Door back into the real world. It was being irresponsible to himself and the innocent. He was thinking of another way to make the curse of the Abraham family disappear to a certain extent. In other words, it might still exist, but it wouldn't affect the normal lives of the Abraham family and provide a certain range of improvements. Is that so? Mid to high sequence Beyonders in the mind domain are really impressive. She can make people follow her arrangements without realizing it. Compared to when we first met, Miss Justice has seemed to undergo a complete metamorphosis. It makes people fear and respect her. Forz glanced at Zio and seemed to read the same poignant thoughts from her eyes. After some thought, she mustered her courage and said to the world Jayamon Sparrow, "What if my teacher rejects your request? Did you think I would murder for property?" Klein lampooned in Chinese. He scoffed and said, "Don't worry, I won't harm him. I won't use any methods that will force him." Phew, although Mr. World is a little scary, he's still a man of his word. Forz slowly nodded and said, "I'll write a letter to my teacher, according to Miss Justice's suggestion." Klein nodded slightly and surveyed the area. "You can begin discussing the hunt." Katlia took control and said, "The biggest problem with this operation is finding the Saint of Secrets Bodhi's." Forz immediately recalled how she had encountered him and raised her hand. "If I can borrow that powerful sealed artifact from my teacher, then I can bring it with me. I can often wander around Backland and use the convergence of Beyonder characteristics to attract Bodhis to a nearby location. This might attract other demigods of the Apprentice Pathway, or the leader of the Secret Order, Zeratul, or Blasphemer Ammon." The more Forz spoke, the lower her voice became. She felt that this method was too dangerous. She didn't know what would happen to the other members who participated in the operation if Zeratul and Ammon really appeared. But as bait, it was without a doubt that she would fail to escape. Katlia nodded and said thoughtfully, "If it's only a Grade 1 sealed artifact of the Apprentice Pathway, the law of convergence of Beyonder characteristics shouldn't be that attractive to neighboring pathways. The range will be limited to the demigods of the Apprentice Pathway, and from what I know, there aren't many of them. In fact, it can be said that there are very few of them. Most of them exist in the form of a characteristic or sealed artifact. I suddenly do not wish to become a Sequence 4. For's eyelids twitched when she heard that. Katlia cast her gaze at the world Jayamon Sparrow. "Let's not discuss the problem of whether there are any Grade 1 sealed artifacts of the Apprentice Pathway. If we want to let the Saint of Secrets and Miss Magician bump into each other, the prerequisite is that he is also in Backland. He mustn't be that cautious and often goes out." Upon hearing this, Leonard said from the angle of a professional official Beyonder, "It's actually not difficult. As a demigod of the Apprentice Pathway, Bodhi's is definitely in charge of dealing with accidents among the upper echelons of the Aurora Order. He has sufficient mobility to aid the other members in different places." Ha, this is a term that appeared after the steam engine and the airship were invented. As long as you can create some matters against the Aurora Order in Backland, he has a high chance of showing up. As he spoke, Leonard glanced at Klein. Based on what he knew, in the chaotic battle outside Bayam City caused by Jayamon Sparrow, the Saint of Secrets had appeared and picked up a glove. "This is a solution," Audrey and company nodded. At this moment, the world suddenly said, "Let me remind you that the Aurora Order is an organization that worships a true god. Once you take action against them and secretly target their upper echelons, the true creator might be able to foresee this and give them a warning." "That can happen." Audrey's eyes widened slightly as she observed Katlia, Leonard, and company. She realized that they were equally astonished. This was something that they had never considered before. It wasn't that they weren't smart enough, but that they had never participated in such matters that involved high-level existences before. Or rather, even if they were involved, they weren't aware of it. "Then what should we do?" Fors couldn't help but ask. Klein replied in a suggestive tone. By not targeting the Aurora Order directly, we can use a milder approach to fish out the Saint of Secrets' Bodhi's.